So let's start talking about old Hollywood renditions of freak offs before the sleeper generation and boomers start thinking that they're angelic like. I'll be back. Hello, folks. Let's get on with this. I want to talk about the generations prior to us or now, how, they had their own renditions of freak offs or FOs. So let me remind you guys that no generation is free of people being freaks. Let's be real with it. And I'm not talking about the freaks that you guys praise being today. I'm talking about the freaks where they had to hide and be a freak. Let's go on. Hollywood's Hotel Hedonism is one of Tinsel Town's last untold stories. How stars from Sinatra to Olivier, Garbo and Monroe indulged their every vice at a VIP hideaway and clothes were not required. Doesn't that sound like an old-fashioned freak-off or an FO? Let's continue. Received wisdom was that if you headed to the hotel swimming pool at cocktail hour, you will find most of the stars of Hollywood's golden age assembled in drunken disarray. If guests weren't already frolicking naked in the water or sneaking off to each other's red-tiled bungalows for illicit entanglements, well, they soon would be. But then every hour was cocktail hour at the Garden of Allah, where many of the 20th century's most famous actors and writers indulged for decades in an endless world of shameless behavior and martini-soaked debauchery. It was Tinsel Town's most tawdry secret, kept hidden from the prying eyes of the busloads of movie fans. Even today, its name is little known and its most salacious episodes forgotten. For example, an admiring new biography on Ronald Reagan published this week. Okay, this article was written in 2015. Failed to mention once in its 816 pages that as a young film star, the future U.S. president stayed in this den of iniquity in between marriages and allegedly seduced a string of women. The notorious institution, which was open in 1927 until 1959, may have disappeared into the mist of Tinsel Town history. But long before the hedonistic excesses of the Playboy Mansion and the infamous louche modern celebrity hangout, the Chateau Marmont Hotel, there was only one place to go if you were a celebrity looking for the sort of lifestyle that neither your spouse nor your public could ever hear about. And they still doing the same thing today. Diddy. Let's go on. For decades, the Garden was not so much a hotel as one very long house party, one where every vice was allowed to flower. And it's easier to say who didn't check in at the Garden rather than who did. Humphrey Bogart, Frank Sinatra, Laurence Olivier, Greta Garbo, Orson Welles were among the actors who lived there. Writers included F. Scott Fitzgerald, W. Somerset, Dorothy Parker, and Ernest Hemingway. Marlene Dietrich liked to swim naked in the pool, while Errol Flynn would pounce on every beauty who so much as dipped her toe in it. In later years, Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield could be found on the Garden's sunken dance floor in a haze of cannabis smoke. There were rumors of parties that turned into orgies, and revelry that wasn't just immoral, but often illegal. Sadly, history doesn't record the name of the Broadway actress who answered her bungalow door to a telegram delivery boy while completely naked except for a pet monkey perched on her shoulder. The mortified boy shoved the telegram into the monkey's paw and fled. The hotel residents, however, were unshockable, even after tumbling fully clothed into the swimming pool, as they frequently did while stumbling from party to party. Although there were few guests who didn't indulge in a hard partying, the garden was also a place to soak up the creativity almost oozing out of the stucco walls. A sanctuary not only for actors and writers, but also musicians. You could walk around and hear not only the clack of typewriters, but also jazz king Benny Goodman practicing in one villa and classical composer Sergei Rachmaninoff working in another. America's most unconventional hotel started life in 1918 when a silent screen star Ala Nazimova bought a 99-year lease on a 40-room Spanish-style house at 8152 Sunset Boulevard. It was surrounded by 3.5 acres of a lush garden full of fruit trees and tropical plants. In those days, Hollywood was still in its infancy and Sunset Boulevard just an unpaved dirt road. The sultry Nazimova built a large swimming pool designed in the shape of the Black Sea to remind her of her native Crimea, and it was one of the first ever to be lit underwater. That would come in useful later. Guests came to stay at her home included the silver screen stars Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Pickford, and Rudolph Valentino, who would ride over on horseback from the Paramount Studios. But the bisexual Nazimova was more interested in her lady visitors who gathered around her pool for what she called sewing circles, otherwise known as lesbian orgies. Looking for a steady income in retirement, she borrowed a small fortune, $1.5 million at the time, to convert her estate into a hotel building 25 Spanish-style bungalows in the grounds around the pool and mansion. The Garden of Allah Hotel opened for business in 1927, but unable to charge enough to meet its costs, went bankrupt within a year and was sold to a syndicate of local businessmen. They added an H to the name, which had nothing to do with Islam, but was taken from a title of a novel. Nazimova stayed on in her apartment, still holding her poolside lesbian soirees for friends who reportedly included Dietrich and Garbo. The garden was perfectly suited for clandestine nighttime activities as it had a string of entrances and exits. The songwriter Cole Porter was just one of the secretly homosexual guests who would smuggle lovers into his villa at night. The original hotel brochure sent out to the studios with the hope they would install their stars there promised an atmosphere of exclusive refinement. It was certainly exclusive. Only successful creative people were allowed to stay there, and the casual riffraff were kept out by guards who had a fearsome dog dubbed the Hound of the Bakers Villas. But it was not exactly refined. The garden was always a favorite with British actors coming out to make their name in Hollywood. The garden's reputation for wanton sexual behavior really took off with the arrival in 1933 of the bombshell actress and notorious libertine Tallulah Bankhead. Like Nazimova, her idol since childhood, Bankhead swung both ways. Barbara Stanwyck and Joan Crawford were among the actresses she reportedly seduced in her garden villa. As for her male conquest, a young Gary Cooper was glimpsed one night running naked to Bankhead's villa. Meanwhile, the early Tarzan star John Weissmuller was said to have made her a very satisfied Jane in the hotel pool. Garden residents loved to jump into it in the winter in full evening dress and splash around. On another occasion, fellow guests were woken one morning by the sound of Bankhead and Weissmuller, evidently back from a party, jumping in off the pool's high diving board. The actress, weighed down in a heavily beaded dress and diamonds, dropped like a stone to the bottom of the pool, where she managed to shed her clothes, emerging completely naked. "Everyone's been dying to see my body," she gasped. "Now they can." So much of the hotel's socializing, printable and unprintable, revolved around the black C-shaped pool. There was always someone ravishing to seduce or at least ogle. A guest recalled a swimsuited Grace Kelly sitting and blandly discussing the color of her lipstick and nail varnish, surrounded by a cluster of smitten young men hanging on her every word. The Australian-born film director John Farrow, father of the actress Mia, loved to lounge on the pool diving board, showing off the tattoo protruding from his tight swimming trunks. It was a snake tattooed on the inside of his left thigh. Needless to say, looked as if it was slithering out from his crotch. Damn. Let's go on. The inveterate womanizer Errol Flynn initially shared a villa with British star David Naveen, but liked to return to the garden in between marriages so he could misbehave freely. Flynn had a particular seduction technique at the garden. His villa faced the pool, and every morning his secretary would place a bottle of champagne with 2 glasses on the table beside the prettiest female sunbather. The actor would later emerge looking immaculate and ask the lucky girl if she would share the bottle with him. Veteran residents liked to bet how long it would take him to lure the woman back to his villa. The Marx Brothers provided more comedy when they stayed at the garden. Harpo recalled being kept awake by Rachmaninoff, who would insist on playing the piano at midnight. The comic finally hit back, waking at 5 a.m., opening all his windows and hammering out his own piano for the first 4 bars. Rachmaninoff prelude in C-sharp minor over and over for 2 hours. Rachmaninoff reportedly complained bitterly, but agreed to move bungalows. No one stayed at the garden for the usual Hollywood perks. Infested by rats, which nested in the palm trees, it always had a shabby feel. The food was dreadful, the service pretty much non-existent, and the bungalow walls were so thin you could hear your neighbor's conversation. Guests admitted that was sometimes part of the attraction. Nothing interrupted the continued tumult that was life at the Garden of Allah, wrote a columnist guest named Lucius Beebe. Now and then the men in white came with a van and took someone away, or bankruptcy or divorce, or even a jail claim to participate in the strictly unstately sarabands dances, but no one paid any mind. Stars often came in between marriages or to avoid their spouses. Humphrey Bogart stayed there with various lovers, including Laura Bacall. He and Bacall were once attacked in their garden villa by his estranged third wife, the actress Mayo Method, who could become deranged when drunk. Fellow guests rushed out to watch the fun as bottles flew and furniture was smashed. Bacall escaped out the back door, while Method chased Bogart around the villa armed with a kitchen knife. Very occasionally, marriages were made rather than broken at the hotel. Frank Sinatra met his future wife, Ava Gardner, when they stayed in adjoining bungalows. The life and soul of the garden party scene was a gregarious writer and humorist named Robert Benchley, a guest who became so drunk that it was said a friend used to thrundle him between the parties in a wheelbarrow. When F. Scott Fitzgerald warned Benchley drink was a slow death, he shot back, "That's all right. I'm in no hurry." Benchley's bosom pal and former lover was rather more waspish with Dorothy Parker. She lived in the garden while working as a Hollywood screenwriter. Her villa frequently visited by ambulance crews after the manic depressive did things to harm herself. That's all I'm going to say. Although always says cynics first warning a friend of her intentions. So before she harmed herself or tried to, she would warn a friend. Scott Fitzgerald moved into the garden for a few months in 1937 during his third and final attempt to make it in Hollywood. The author of The Great Gatsby was trying to stay sober at the time, so he couldn't have chosen a worse new home. An alcoholic since his student days, he was soon back on the bottle and 3 years later died of a heart attack at the nearby home of his girlfriend, Sheila Graham. Even World War II didn't dampen the garden's non-stop party spirit, but after its two guiding lights, Benchley and Nazimov died in 1945. The world's most riotous hotel went into gradual decline. Drugs replaced drinks as a poison of choice, villas were robbed, and prostitutes crowded out the bar. Guests now included Virginia Hill, a notorious gangster's ma who reportedly blackmailed several Hollywood celebrities she seduced in the garden. Ronald Reagan moved there in 1948 after the failure of his first marriage to actress Jane Wyman. Nancy Reagan's biographer, Kitty Kelly, claimed the future U.S. president bedded so many women that he later told a friend, "I woke up one morning and couldn't remember the name of the gal I was in bed with." Others insist, however, that the actor was simply looking for companionship in his loneliness. If so, he was definitely in the minority among the garden's guests. The hotel always struggled to make much of a profit. By the end of the 50s, the stars had gravitated to smarter, more luxurious hotels. The garden closed its doors for the last time in August 1959, throwing a huge farewell party to which 1,000 people turned up, before it was bulldozed to make way for a business center. Auctioneers did a roaring trade selling off the old beds. Ooh. Every buyer was quietly assured that theirs had been owned by Errol Flynn. The wild spirits who lived so riotously at the Garden of Allah would have been proud. And you know, back in those days, they were really off the chain. There used to be a series, a TV series that came on. I don't know if it was the early 20s or it could have been the 90s. It was called Hollywood Scandals. If I could find a video of it, I'll insert it. It used to be a video. That TV show used to come on, and they used to just talk about all the scandalous things that Hollywood did. It was just so crazy, off the chain. And yes, this was before social media. So I'm thinking, because the stories were so scandalous, it's like literally had your mouth open. I'm thinking somebody like got it pulled. They was like, "Look, y'all. And I don't know if you guys recall a TV show called hold on, let me find it. In like 2007, 2008, Courtney Cox did a show called Dirt. And I'm telling you, that show was so off the chain. When you hear about all the things Diddy allegedly got involved in or was doing, and other celebrities was right there with him, it's like I'm thinking about all these shows I saw back in the day, and I'm like, wow, this was real. This was real. They were showing us what these celebrities are really about, but masking it as good TV. Dirt didn't have too many seasons. I don't know if it had a full season or maybe two, but it was somehow discontinued. And I'm like, surprise, surprise. I guess when it gets too close to real, or like they can't really explain it away, like, oh my God, we just created this just for TV show, or just for, well, as people say, fan fiction. They can't act like it's just fan fiction, it's not mirroring some big Hollywood's life. That's when they cancel it. You know, some big time celebrity probably was like, if you don't can this show, that's gonna be your ass, because it was too close to home. And like I said, when you think Diddy, what's going on with Diddy got people going to do some serious research. If they didn't do research before, they're doing some serious research now. Because you got all these things in our head that we used to see back in the day. Like, oh. So, thank you guys. I'm about to shut up shop. Thank you guys for your time and attention. Liking, sharing, supporting, caring. Like I said, sharing is caring. And thank you for your support in any way that you can in a positive manner. And like I said, folks, there are a whole lot of videos on this channel. I was just boom, 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 pumping them out. So thank you. Appreciate you. And I will be back in 2 clicks. Well, I don't even know how much time that 2 clicks is. I will see you in the next video.